it.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate the time that you're spending with us today, and we really appreciate your partnership. So I'm Google's Chief Search Evangelist for the world, and I have the privilege of working with many of the world's top retailers. And what I thought I would do today is share with you how they're winning on Google. That sound like a good way to spend a half an hour? Yeah? Great. Okay. So it wouldn't surprise you that the number one reason why top retailers are winning in an age where the consumer is incredibly difficult to please, expects personalization, and expects the right ad at the right time for the right product, that top retailers are winning because of machine learning. So I thought I would spend a little bit of time talking about machine learning. Who is familiar with AlphaGo? Raise your hands, don't be shy. So maybe a quarter of the room. So as you know, in 1996, IBM Deep Blue beat Garry Kasparov in chess. It was a really incredibly seminal moment in computing. And then in 2006, Jeopardy was beaten by Watson. And last year, the world champion at Go, Lee Sedol, was beaten by a computer from Google, 4-1. And the game of Go is significantly more complex than the game of chess. As a matter of fact, there are more permutations in Go than the number of atoms in the universe. This is really hard to believe, but it's true. And it was thought that a computer couldn't win at Go for decades and decades. But last year, Google was able to beat the world champion. And the way we did that is by downloading hundreds of thousands of human games from the internet and learning from human play, where the computer was able to look at the patterns of human play and improved. And then the computer played against itself and got even better. What happened next, I think, is really interesting. The team that built AlphaGo created another system called AlphaGo Zero. And the idea there was to see if the computer could learn this highly complex game by itself. What if we don't give the computer any of the human games? And by the way, Go is like nearly a 4,000-year-old game that has been played generation after generation. So can the computer learn this game all by itself? So the computer started at a beginner level, played against itself, and got better. And after 40 days of training, this version of AlphaGo that had no human knowledge built into it beat this version 100-0. So 3,500 years of knowledge, of human knowledge about this game was bad for the computer to know. The computer was better off starting from scratch. And then for fun, the team built a system using the same algorithms, the same computer that would learn chess on its own, again, not having any human knowledge, just learning chess by itself. And 4 hours later, put this computer online to play against the #1 rated computer chess program called Stockfish, which is significantly better than human players. And AlphaZero won 28-0. So a computer learned to master chess at a superhuman level in 4 hours. So I'm sharing this with you for a couple of reasons. One is to really impress upon you that machine learning is here today and it's really working. And number two is Google is pretty good at it. I also wanted to share with you how a machine learns over time. This is a computer learning the game Breakout. And a computer doesn't know what the game is. It has no idea. It's just been told to make the score higher and to optimize the score. And it knows that it can move, the joystick left to right, up and down. But it's really struggling, obviously, after 10 minutes. It's basically just kind of random luck if it hits the ball to break some of those bricks. But over time, the computer learns that breaking the bricks increases the score, so it starts to do this. And after 2 hours, it will never miss the ball ever again. But what's really interesting is what happens 2 hours later. The computer has figured out, again, all on its own, without being programmed, that going behind the wall on the top is the most efficient strategy. Those of us who are old enough to have played this game remember us. We actually figured this out. So the computer plays a perfect game, and it will always play a perfect game from now on. I share this with you I'm sure your Google team has been trying to get you to use our machine learning tools, and I will reiterate this today. The computer will take 2 or 3 weeks to learn. It's going to really act like this. It's going to be quite poor at first, but eventually it's going to really be extraordinary. As you install machine learning tools from Google, give them 3 weeks. Do not stop them after a week of unsuccessful testing. The machine is learning your business really quickly. I wanted to share my favorite business example of the uses of machine learning. The insurance company Aksai, based in Europe, has a pretty obvious business problem. People crash their cars, and it's really hard to predict. Despite having, trying to do this for over 100 years and having hundreds of actuaries, they can't predict who's going to crash their car with any real accuracy. And 8% of their drivers has a car accident every year, and 1% of those 8% has a car accident that costs over $10,000 to insure. Google worked with Aksai using their data, same data they had before, and using our machine learning tools. And after a few weeks, Aksai was able to predict car accidents at the individual car level, not in aggregate, but each and every one of you's likelihood to crash your car in the next year with 78% accuracy. Imagine being the CMO or the CEO or the CFO of an insurance company that can predict car accidents at 78% accuracy. And your competitors can do it at 35 or 40% accuracy. It is a game-changing revelation for an insurance company. So one suggestion for you, whatever business problems that you have, whether it's a marketing issue or it's a demand forecasting issue or a fraud issue, whatever it is, talk to your Google team about it. There's a pretty good chance we can help you with this. If we can predict car accidents before they happen, it's pretty likely we can help you with whatever issue that you're dealing with from a business perspective. So don't be shy about asking about anything at all that you care about. We may not be able to solve all of these problems, but we can certainly try. And this is a really, I think, interesting chart. This is a chart of the computing power of different machine learning algorithms from 2013 to 2018, with AlphaGo 0 being at the top here. And this is a logarithmic chart. This is exponential. Since 2013, the computing power of machine learning algorithms has improved by 300,000. Machine learning computing power is increasing today at 5 times the speed of Moore's law. Right? So if you think machine learning is powerful today, it's going to increase rapidly and radically. If you don't have a machine learning strategy going forward and your competitors do, it's not going to be an even fight. It's night and day. Okay, so let's kind of go down to one level and talk about performance marketing. Like, how does this apply, and how can Google help you be more successful in marketing using machine learning? And it's funny, so I work in Mountain View, and my job is to welcome senior executives to our Partnerplex and talk about their digital strategy. And the #1 request I get is this one, right? Like, let's be honest, right? Google is really complicated. Why does that have to be so complicated? Why can't we make it so much simpler? Why can't Google learn your business and what you care about and deliver those results as automatically as possible? Why do you have to learn keywords and bids and audiences? Why don't we just take care of this on your behalf so you can focus on what really matters, which is marketing? So we're doing this today. This is clearly the vision for Google's performance marketing strategy, making it simpler and more automated going forward. And it's not as futuristic as it seems, because we're doing quite a few things today, and I'll share a couple of examples with you. The first one is universal shopping campaigns, which is today in beta. It's not fully released yet, but it's working really, really well. And this is a fully automated strategy for retailers. Fully automated strategy using machine learning, where you upload your products to your merchant center. You tell Google the ROI you want to have, 5-to-1, 6-to-1, whatever it is that you care about. And we create the ads, we buy the keywords, we do the attribution modeling, we create the bids on search, on display, on YouTube, and on Gmail. And at the end, what you get is that 6-to-1 or 5-to-1 ROI, automatically. This is working today. Fully automated marketing for retailers. It's a money machine. You put $1 into it, $6 comes out. You wake up every day, and you put $1 into it, $6 comes out. The second product I want to briefly mention is universal app campaigns, which is very similar. If you're an app developer, if you're a retailer with an app, which by the way, all retailers should have an app, and you're trying to drive loyalty through your app, you can call your Google team and say, you know what, I'd like to invest $2 to have somebody download my app, or $5 to register on my app, or $20 to make the first purchase on my app. Whatever you care about, and then we can measure it together. And you, again, using machine learning, on YouTube, Search, Display Network, and on our Google Play Store, we automatically, at scale, deliver these results at the price you want. Downloads for $2 at scale. And this is working so well, by the way, that we announced earlier this year that this is the only way an app developer can work with Google. You can no longer buy Search on your own or YouTube on your own as an app developer. You have to go through the system because it outperforms humans by 140%. And it saves you 99% of your time. So a fully automated retail solution in beta and a fully automated app solution live today. And they're working beautifully, and they're getting great results. So here's my second piece of advice. On your next meeting with your Google team, sit down and then really talk about business. Talk about what you care about. What are your marketing goals? What are you trying to drive? Sales at a certain ROI, loyalty, lifetime value, whatever you care about. And explain that in detail to your team at Google. Explain the KPIs you care about. And then let us automate the stuff. Right? Think of this as like the Google marketing brain. Let us automate this. The tactics are well known. By the way, we know what works in retail. Whatever tactic a Google team recommends will usually work. And then look at the totality of what you're doing with Google. So for example, if you have a 4-to-1 or 5-to-1 ROI as one of your key goals when you're acquiring customers, don't look at the ROI of every single keyword or every single banner or every single YouTube video. Let the machine decide. Now, this keyword may look expensive, but the reason the machine is buying it is because it makes sense as a totality from a marketing perspective. It may not make sense if you just look at it by itself, but it makes sense to buy it across the entire strategy. Measure Google as Google, not as keywords or banners or YouTube. Measure the ROI across the whole marketing stack. Okay, so now the next question becomes, hey Nick, if we're all going to be using machine learning to compete against each other, using Google's machine learning, how do I win? I mean, retailer number 1 is trying to sell the same SKU as retailer number 2. They're both using the strategies I just mentioned. How do you differentiate yourself in online marketing? How do you win? So I'm going to share with you 5 rules on how to win in the kind of the future of machine learning-based marketing. And I would suggest that from a marketing perspective, your marketing team spend a lot more time on these things than on picking keywords and creating bid strategies, which a machine can do better today than we can manually. So what are the 5 rules that retailers are using today to win using machine learning? Rule number 1, and Chris mentioned this before, but this is critical. This is the biggest rule by far. If you're measuring your online marketing as an e-commerce driver only and not as an e-commerce plus store driver, you're not going to win. Like imagine advertiser A, e-commerce driven only, advertiser B, e-commerce plus store, and their store multiplier is 3 or 4 or 5x. Their ROI that they see is 5x the ROI that you see. There is no chance you can win in the auction. They're going to bid a lot higher than you are. So here's a really great example from Canada. You search for Hermes scarf, and I'm sorry this is too low, but I'll describe it to you. There's the traditional kind of search ad where I can click on this and go to the site, and then there's a phone number I can call, and then there's a direction to the closest store. If you have stores or if you have a call center, this is what your ad should look like. But if you're driving people only to your site because you're being measured from an e-commerce perspective only, and you don't have the direction to the store or the ability for a consumer to call you, you're not going to drive people to the store as much. So this is the number one rule. Make sure you focus on driving people online and in store. So to continue the Hermes example, if I click on the site, I go to the site and buy online. If I want to buy in store, I can choose to get directions to the store. And now with their measurement systems at Google, we can really measure this well. We can measure the e-commerce sales as we've always been able to measure the e-commerce sales, and now we can measure store traffic or even actual store revenues if you choose to share those with us. I'm going to make, I think, a pretty strong statement. Having worked with many of the top retailers in the US, I would say the ones who are doing this are still thriving in the age of Amazon, and the ones who are not are dead or dying. This is the number one issue I'm seeing that differentiates retailers thriving versus the ones that are really struggling. Online marketing is not about e-commerce. It's still only about 11% of sales in the US. It's about driving people to e-commerce and to your store. I know you get this intellectually. I know we all get this. I know Google has been drumming this into your heads for a while. Are you really doing it? Are you really doing it? Are you being comped on store sales or only in e-commerce? Because if you are, it's a gigantic problem. Number one rule, make sure you're driving online and store sales, not just online sales. We have lots of examples of success in this category. We can go through them a lot. By the way, I think the Home Depot team Canada is here today. Fantastic work from that team. Look, think about the Home Depot, right? I mean, nobody's going to go online and buy a 2x4, at the website. But the Home Depot understands that if you go on their site, there's a much higher likelihood that you go into the store. So they're driving this omni-channel return, not this store, this website-only return. And if you look at the Home Depot's recent, annual reports or investor presentations, you can see, by the way, that they're going to invest a lot of money in e-commerce, nearly as much as they're going to invest in all their stores combined, because they understand that their website is the window to their stores. This is really critical. Lots of examples. Best Buy, right? Millions in store visits. So Macy's, the average omni-channel consumer is 8 times more valuable than somebody just shops in the store, shops online. Sports Check, driving a lot more store visits with Google. Reitman's, one of my old clients from Montreal, doing great work as well. This works across every retailer in the world. If you're skeptical about this, you need to get over this really quickly. The consumer is going to search online to buy in your store. And if you're not there, they're not going to come to the store. Number one rule, this is not about e-commerce. We're driving people to the site and to the store. Number two, what is the marketing KPI? Right? You've got a machine learning algorithm doing the work for you. What are you telling it to optimize to? Is a critical decision you have to make. So I'll share with you kind of the continuum from least sophisticated all the way to what the top retailers in the world are doing. Least sophisticated, I have a fixed marketing budget, gives me as many customers as possible for that fixed marketing budget. Next level of sophistication, hey, I have a cost per something, cost per lead, cost per acquisition. As long as I pay no more than $100 to acquire a new customer, I've got an infinite budget, please go ahead and acquire more customers, because I make so much money when I acquire customers for $100. Next level of sophistication, you know what, if I sell $100 worth of stuff, I want to spend no more than 10%, 20%, 30% in marketing. I want an ROI, I want a percentage of sales. Again, I have an open budget, but I only put $1 into marketing if I get $2, $3, $4, $5, $6 back. And I'd say, by the way, most retailers in the US at this point are here, at least. The next one is, as opposed to passing Google back the revenues I'm making for each SKU that's being sold in my shopping cart or in the store, I'm going to pass the margin per SKU. If I sell 2 $100 items and one's got a $50 margin, one's a $30 margin, why am I bidding the same for both of those transactions? So we're seeing now a lot of retailers not passing us revenue, but passing us margin. So now it becomes something like, hey, look, I'm willing to spend 100% or 50% or whatever number of my gross margin in marketing to acquire a new customer. And we're moving quickly with many, many advertisers to some kind of 3-year, 5-year lifetime value profit metric. And here the conversation is something like, hey, Google, let's measure together how much money I make over 3 years when I acquire a customer, and let's maximize that profitability. Notice, by the way, that every one of these is a short-term metric until you get to here, which actually looks in the future a little bit more and thinks about the medium term and the long term. The KPI you select to tell the machine to optimize to will drive in large part the results you're going to get. If you're here, you have a fixed budget, whatever happens with your results, and somebody is here, they're going to beat you. That's the second rule. What are you optimizing to? And the third rule is, not every customer is the same. You can have Steve come in one day and buy $100 worth on his first transaction, and Joanne come in and buy $100 worth on her first transaction, with both the same margin. But if Steve's never going to come back and Joanne's going to come back 20 times, can you forecast that? Do you know who your best customers are? Can you forecast lifetime value? And if you can you bid differently? Because if you don't and somebody else does, they're going to bid higher for the best customers and bid lower for those customers who are never going to come back. They're going to get the majority of all the good customers. So here's an example of some work I did recently with a cruise company. The cruise company came to us, and the way we worked together using machine learning was, look, I'm willing to pay 10% of the value of a cruise back into marketing. So if somebody buys a $5,000 cruise, which is our premium cruise, I'll pay $500 in marketing. If somebody buys a $3,000 cruise, I'll pay $300 in marketing. Incredibly logical, right? Makes total sense. Absolutely the wrong strategy. Because the majority of the $5,000 cruises were newlyweds who were not going to come back for years, and the majority of those cheaper cruises were retirees. So it turns out, if you're a cruise company, you want to acquire older, rich people, not newlyweds. And if you know that, your strategy shifts completely from paying more for this one to actually paying more for that one. Completely counterintuitive when you first approach the problem, but then, after the fact, completely obvious, right? So, do you know who your best customers are? For the majority of you, 10 to 25% of your customers drive 80% of your revenues. Do you know who they are? Can you tell us? Because if you can tell us, for example, that women 18 to 34 who buy these types of SKUs as their first purchase are much more valuable to you than other people, we can find more people like that. We can bid higher for these people in the auction, and you'll get more of them. This is critical. Do you know who your best customers are? And can you tell us? It will help you find more people like that. And the trick is you have to be willing to live with a lower ROI on the first transaction. If you're bidding higher for the $3,000 cruise, the first time you acquire this customer, you're actually making less money. But over time, you make a lot more money, right? So if you have that 2 to 3 year vision and not just a one transaction, this is when you can do it. Most retailers, by the way, eventually figure this out. They figure out who their best customers are, but they eventually stop thinking this way because they're so short-term focused, and they're not willing to take the hit in the short term to spend more money acquiring this customer. But some retailers are willing to do that, and they do it very, very well, and they acquire all the best customers. Do you know who your best customers are? Rule number 4, going even further, can you do some really detailed segmentation of your customers? So here's an example of some work that I did recently with, and all these numbers are not real, they're all hidden, but every blue dot here is a customer, an individual customer with a customer ID and a name, and this customer today, this advertiser, is able to forecast for every single customer they have on the horizontal axis their 3 to 5 year lifetime value profitability, and on the vertical axis their likelihood to churn. Imagine being able to segment people not based on age or gender, but based on how valuable they are to you and based on how likely they are to leave you. Like, how differently would you market to really, really high value customers with a really high likelihood to churn? How differently would you market to these really low value customers with a low likelihood to churn? I would argue you should exclude these people. They're going to come anyway. They're not that valuable, so you're wasting money in marketing. And I would argue you should really double down on these people. Move away from thinking about keywords and banners and videos and media, and think about your customers and their value to you at the individual customer level. So going back to the Aksai example, imagine I can forecast car accidents at a 78% rate of accuracy. I can go through this entire room and run this model and know how much money I'll make from each and every one of you over the next 5 years with a pretty high degree of accuracy. $500 from you, $1,000 from you, minus 500 from you, minus 500 from you because you crashed your car. I can go down the whole line in every one of you and know how much money I'm going to make. And I can tell the machine learning algorithm to bid the right amount based on the individual profitability of each individual Canadian. This is happening today. This is happening today in Canada. Can you segment your customers that way? And then, do you have a churn prevention program? Most Google advertisers think about acquiring. This is fantastic, you should acquire, but do you have a program to make sure they stay with you? Do you have a recommendation engine that can cross-sell so they can increase lifetime value? Right? Imagine being able to increase lifetime value by 20, 30, 40%. Allows you to bid higher when you're acquiring customers. McKinsey study, this is a 4-year-old study from 2014, suggested Amazon is getting 35% of its revenues from its recommendation engine. Segment. Don't treat every customer the same. They're all worth different amounts to you. Some of them are really loyal. They're not going to leave even if you don't market to them. Some of them they're about to leave you to a competitor. You should know this, and then you should act on it and test these different strategies to see what prevents churn. Because by the way, you can then take a segment of these people, high value, high likelihood to churn, cut that segment in half, put 50,000 people here, 50,000 people here, and do a certain marketing strategy for these 50,000 people and not do it for these 50,000 people, and you can see if churn gets reduced. Segment, and then don't just do acquisition. Do cross-selling, do loyalty, increase your lifetime value over time. Are you even tracking lifetime value? Do you know the lifetime value per customer? Do you know the lifetime value per cohort? Incredibly important. And then lastly, rule number 5, if there are 2 advertisers bidding for the same keyword on Google and one converts at 3%, one converts at 2%, advertiser at 3% will win every time. So how much work are you doing to increase conversion? And again, conversion on your website and conversion in store. And I'm sure your Google team is talking to you a lot about this, but I want to impress upon you something, this is pretty amazing to me. Alibaba is a multi-billion-dollar company, incredibly great website, converting really, really well, but a change to progressive web apps made their site a lot faster. Conversion rates are up 76%. 76%. However good you think you are at conversion rates, I guarantee you there's at least a 50% upside. So keep working on it. Conversion rate is one thing in terms of speed. Friction is really important, and Chris talked a little bit about this. But if a consumer has to input some stuff into a form to convert on your site, the conversion rates plummet. So I don't know if you've heard about the Domino's Pizza zero-click ordering system. Amazon has one-click ordering, Domino's has zero-click ordering. You buy your first pizza, you have to pick the pizza and you put in your address. But then when you launch the app the second time, it tells you you have 10 seconds to touch something, because if you don't, I'm going to order another pizza for you. Zero-click ordering is like 7-minute ads, 6-minute ads, 5-minute ads. But look at the friction on your website. How much friction is there to complete that first order? We hear a lot like, mobile doesn't convert. Well, it has to be fast and it has to have no friction. And then, in terms of converting better, there is nothing better than creating loyalty and stickiness, so people don't even have to think about buying from you. So there's, all of these kind of membership e-commerce programs I've launched, obviously, as you know. But I wanted to quickly share with you this amazing example of what Starbucks has done, where 24% of all the revenues on Starbucks, this was about a year ago, they haven't disclosed since, but come from the app. And there's $1.2 billion of prepaid coffee sitting on this app. I mean, it's a large Canadian bank, right? There's like if you're the CFO, by the way, if you can earn like a 3 or 4% on this, I'm not going to do the math because it's going to hurt, but yeah, it's like $60 million of cash flow a year. Just, the money sitting there. But incredible loyalty because of the stickiness of the app. So the rule here is there's a lot of work on Google itself. You should use machine learning to do that. There's a lot of work on your end as well to make your site fast, to make your site friction-free, and to make your entire experience much more sticky so that people come back. So if you take all these rules together, right, measure better, optimize better, focus on the right customers, your best customers, segment better, and then convert better, in my experience, in every category of advertiser at Google, whether it's retail, e-commerce, or it's an omni-channel retailer, there's 1 to 2 advertisers who have nailed this. And they're 20 to 25% better across the entire cycle here. And if you're just going to multiply it out, if you're only 20% better at each of these areas, you're 100% better or even 150% better than the average competitor. So next time you search for something on Google and you see one of your competitors in the first position and you wonder why they can afford to be there and you can't, it's because of this. They're making a lot more money on the other side of the equation than you are. You need to close that gap to be able to compete. So, quick summary. Number 1, automate, 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 automate. Follow all of the advice of your Google team and automate everything they're suggesting. Test it, obviously, but automate, automate, automate. Number 2, work across the full funnel, right? Universal shopping campaigns are at the bottom of the funnel on search, they're on display, they're on YouTube. There's a disease that many advertisers have, which is bottom of the funnel-itis. Don't have bottom of the funnel-itis. As long as the whole funnel is getting you the number that you want, the ROI that you want, invest across the funnel. Don't just invest at the bottom of the funnel. And lastly, follow the 5 rules in order to win. If you can automate this stuff and not have to worry about keywords and bids, you'll be spending a lot more time fixing what really matters, which is this stuff here. So before I leave, let's do a quick exercise. If you can take out pen and paper, and I'll give you a minute to do this. Put down the top 3 things that you'd like to accomplish from a marketing perspective over the next year or so. And I'm going to ask you to share that with your Google team. So for example, you know what? As long as we have a 4-to-1 ROI or 5-to-1 ROI or whatever it is, I would like to eventually get to some open budget because now I've got a money printing machine doing a 4-to-1 ROI. That's a pretty normal marketing goal. It could be something like, I want to start really measuring store sales, not just online sales. It could be something like, hey, increase the average lifetime value of my customers by 15%, as long as I spend no more than X dollars in marketing. Or it could be something like, reduce churn by X%, as long as I spend no more than Y in marketing. Create your dream list, your wish list, and then share that with Google, and let us automate that as much as possible. Thank you very much.